Hey everybody, guess what's on my mind today? Dialogue is something I would still consider myself relatively new at. I may have been writing stories for 6+ years, but that doesn't mean that for all that time I was doing it really well, and there are many people who have been writing stories for far longer than I. Still though, over time and listening to other people, especially people with more experience, I have learned a few things, and some things I just picked up from observation. Good dialogue can be a huge variety of things. A few things that come to mind to me are dialogue that is very witty, dialogue that is very profound, and I think the most important one, though, is dialogue that makes characters distinct from each other. I'm going to use a few different examples from a few different shows that are very different from each other. There will be some light criticism of these shows, but it won't be too negative, don't worry. I know a lot of people criticize VivziePop's work, so I'm going to try to be not too cringy about it. I'm going to say both good things and bad things. I'm not going to talk about VivziePop herself, but two of her shows, Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel. I would not be the first person to criticize the use of really blatant, crass humor in VivziePop's shows, especially Helluva Boss. For this video, I'm not criticizing the humor itself, but the way it is used in the show. You can have characters who are really crass and crude all the time. The problem arises when that is nearly every character in the show. Instead of having mostly characters who are just overly crass, you could also have characters who are crass in slightly more subtle ways, and characters who aren't crass at all. You need different styles of humor and different ways of speaking. In Hazbin Hotel, you also have characters who are really crass, but when they are notably very crass, I think that makes the character stand out. Whereas in Helluva Boss, I think that just makes the character blend in with everyone else. Because of Helluva Boss's consistent crass dialogue style, it makes characters who aren't notably crass stand out a lot more, but unfortunately, those characters are very few. And I submit to you that those characters actually become fan favorites, not because they aren't crass, but because they are more distinct than everyone else. Fizzaroli is a bit sheltered and naive, and even though he is in a relationship with literal lust, he comes across as very innocent and sweet in comparison to the rest of the cast. To the show's credit, because the dialogue is so overstuffed with crude jokes, when a character is introduced who doesn't get it or who is disturbed by it, this makes for a really funny contrast. I just wish we had this contrast a whole lot more in the show, because when characters play off each other who are very similar to each other, it's not nearly as funny as characters who play off each other who are inherently different. Another good example is the use of swearing. In Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel, the characters swear quite a bit. That makes characters who don't swear, or who are more intentional with their swearing, very distinct and impactful. Or rather, what they say has more weight.
Well, it's not very clever.
Fuck you. Okay.
While very prideful, Alistair is also very charming and classy in the way he speaks. He has no need to use swear words to get his point across because he's rarely very direct. So anytime Alistair does say a bad word, usually it's because he is either very pissed off or he is getting very serious. In other words, this is probably your cue to back the hell away. Shows that feature characters with very distinct personalities from each other usually result in really good or really funny dialogue. This is one of the many reasons why I love most versions of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When Rise first came out, I was not happy with it. Now please understand, I'm not judging the show as a whole, I'm just judging it on my first impressions. I felt like their distinct personalities were almost no longer there, and they were kind of diluted with this samey sense of humor. It was funny, but it got boring after a few episodes for me. My brother tells me though that this show improved massively over time, so I should give it a watch properly at some point. Cheers is also, I think, a really good example of extremely distinct characters with their own unique styles of humor. Diane speaks in an over-the-top romantic way, coming across as an overeducated snob, who maybe has a head full of air. Carla is a feisty, no-nonsense tramp who is very cynical. Woody is a sheltered country boy who comes across as naive to the point of being stupid, but he surprises people often with his extensive knowledge of certain things.
You sound like a lady who is getting tired of her teeth. I'm tired of your teeth and all the vermicelli in between.
I've heard it said that good dialogue means you need to be able to recognize a character from the way they talk alone. So if you were listening to the radio and someone started talking, you immediately knew who it was, or if you were reading a comic and you only had the speech bubble, you would immediately know. I think this is a good frame of reference and something I definitely need to keep in mind when writing. If you have any of your own thoughts to add about dialogue, please share them with me in the comments. I'd love to talk with you. Have a good week.